Hey guys, once again, it's Adam from ATP Powerlifting, and today, as you probably guessed, we're going to go over belts. We're going to go over which one's right for you, which brand, 10 millimeter, 13 millimeter, and how to actually utilize your belt to get the best results out of it. Because we all know buying a belt isn't enough, you also have to develop the skill of using it. So let's get into it. So let's start off with trying to figure out which belt is right for you. So there's a lot of variety. So when my clients do decide that they want to get a belt, usually they start with, hey, I'm going to get a belt, and instantly come back with the next session with, hey, I need help. What belt should I get? Because it's very overwhelming. So there's a lot of options to choose from. There's the cheap Walmart belt that doesn't really provide so much support, but it's more of like a bodybuilding style belt. So you see lever belts. Then there's reverse engineered lever belts, like the one SBD makes that they charge like an astronomical amount of money for. I'll throw it up somewhere over here. There's the new Pioneer belt that came out that they just kind of redesigned the lever again to allow you to do smaller increments. There's double prong belts, and then there's single prong belts, and then there's this single prong belt that is also has smaller adjustments. So there's a lot out there. And then 10 millimeter versus 13 millimeter and all the different brands. And then if you compete in powerlifting, it's, well, which belt are we allowed to compete with in our powerlifting federation? So it can get very overwhelming. So I hope this helps you out. So starting with the first belt I ever had, which is the Walmart bodybuilding style, where it's smaller in the front and bigger in the back belt. I would really only recommend this for individuals that are just looking for a little bit extra support. If you're into any real seriously lifting with compound movements and stuff, you don't want to get anything like this. It's going to wear out, it's going to fall apart. Like even now it's really crusty, but I mean, if you're just trying to learn how to use a belt and you're on a budget, you could start with this, but I really wouldn't recommend it. Let's just throw more money into something that's going to last forever. So let's go to the Inzer, I think it's called the Forever Lever Belt. So it's a pretty simple design. Hopefully you can see this. I don't know how zoomed up I am, but it just clicks in, you adjust it, boom, tightened, boom, loosened. This is a 10 millimeter belt. Downside of this would be that if you are someone who gets bloated or you gain or lose weight pretty frequently, it's really annoying to take this apart with the screws here. You can see that, the screws in there, to adjust it on a day-to-day basis. So I would not recommend this belt, although I did love this when my weight was staying constant. This is the same thing, made by Pioneer. So this is my girlfriend's belt. Pioneer, you can customize, so you can see it says Slater on one side, and then her Instagram handle on the other side. You're gonna pay a lot more money for a belt that's customized like this, but if that's your thing, that's your thing, so do it up. This is a Inzer double prong belt. Double prong, in my opinion, is just overkill. It's just more of a pain to get it on and off, trying to get both of these levers to pop free. And the idea behind the double prong was like, what? That the single prong would rip apart. So it doesn't really make sense, because the single prong is never gonna just rip apart or fall apart. And this is just more of a pain to get off. This is a 13 millimeter, so it's a little bit thicker. And then the last belt I have here is the Pioneer cut belt. And these are the ones that Elite FTS buys off Pioneer and then resells. I got this when I was at their facility for a pretty good deal. This is by far my favorite belt because it allows you to adjust small increments. So like I'll tell you right away, like if I eat right before I work out, I'm probably only gonna make it about 13 holes in. And if I'm really skinny, maybe a little bit dehydrated on one day, I'm gonna make it 15 in. But that's really nice because you can have that same level of tightness regardless if you're bloated or when you're working out during the day. And it has finer adjustments than something like this, where these adjustments are further spaced out, whereas these are pretty much half of the distance. So I would recommend this one only because it's my favorite. It's also a 13 millimeter. I will say if you're trying to decide between a 13 millimeter and a 10 millimeter, most people are going to prefer a 10 millimeter belt. It's easier to break in. It doesn't give you as many bruises and stuff like that. If you're doing it right, you will get bruises breaking the belt in if you're creating enough of pressure. But we'll get to this after trying to pick your belt. So I'd say for most people, 10 millimeter belt, and go with something that's single prong. And I really prefer the Pioneer cut, which gives you smaller adjustments. Again, they do have a new lever, Pioneer, coming out that it has finer tuned adjustments. It actually kind of allows you to adjust it. I'll post a picture up here so it makes more sense of what I'm talking about. But it allows you to adjust it in finer increments. That's fine too. I don't see any problems with that in theory coming up, so it's really your preference. But I probably would definitely be going with one of the Pioneer belts, as they are easily adjustable, even if you get the single prong or the lever, and they allow for smaller increments of adjustment. The part that does suck is that Pioneer is not approved by the IPF, although if you go through other manufacturers, like I'm not staying super up to date on it, but A7 I know buys belts from Pioneer, and A7 is IPF approved. So this belt, not IPF approved, but Pioneer sells this to A7. A7 has Pioneer put their logo on it, and boom, now it's IPF approved because everything A7 is pretty much approved. So I hope that helped you out, but let's get into the portion on how we actually use and utilize these belts. So let's start right from the beginning. You get your belt in the mail, and you're like, all right, we put this thing on, well, how tight does it go? I'm gonna tell you how tight it goes. So you don't want the belt so loose that after you brace into it, and we'll go over this after how to brace into it, that if you're bracing into it, you can still get your hand in there, okay? So what we're trying to do is brace out against the belt and create pressure. If we're really creating as much pressure as we can into the belt, there should be no room around here to get anything in while we're braced. So, but before we brace, I'm gonna go in, usually whereabouts I'm good, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14. So I'm not fat today, or fat for me, or skinny today. I'm right in the middle, all right? So you can see from here, I can get my hand in here, but it's a little difficult, right? I really gotta push it in there, but I haven't braced yet. Now, when I take a big breath, all right, I'm pushing the air into my stomach, and then I brace. I can't get my hand out until I release that breath, and then my hand will come out. So we're creating so much pressure that there should be really no more space in there. So when I take that big belly breath, put it into my stomach, and brace my abs really hard, my hand should be locked in there. Like there should be no way you can get it out. Like I wish I had a better way to explain it to you or show you like really how much pressure I'm creating. But, oh, that's a good way right there, is I just cut my hand. So there you go. So like you're trying to create a lot of pressure. If you can put your hand in there, breathe, big breath, brace, and then just pull your hand out, definitely too light. So you can play around with how tight you can really get it while still being able to breathe and brace on your own, and try it out. Maybe start, when you first get the belt, start a little bit looser just to get used to it so it doesn't feel like it's caving you in, because you are going to have to push out against it, and then slowly tighten it as you go. Which is another reason I like this belt, because as I'm warming up, I can slowly tighten it as I start with 135 or whatever and go up. But can you put your belt too tight? And you definitely can put your belt too tight. So a lot of people get this idea of the belt is protecting you. It is what is, like, you're gonna crank the shit out of the belt, and the belt is gonna make you just magically lift more weight, and it's gonna keep you safe because you're just cranking it, it's just squeezing your body together. And that's not the case. The belt is acting as a second layer of abs, and when we push out against it, that's creating pressure that then keeps us safe and allows us to lift more weight. So I know other people in the past have used the same analogy, but I mean, I think I'm gonna do a little bit better with it. So this Powerade bottle is gonna represent our torso, right? So from here to here. If the belt isn't on at all, right? It's just the bottle. If we were to put a rubber band around this belt loosely, or around this bottle, it'd create a little bit of pressure, and then if we blew into it, the bottle would be pushing out against the rubber band, right? So that would be if the belt was on just normally. If we put the belt so tight that we kink the bottle, what's gonna happen to our torso or the bottle once we put load going down? It's going to crush over because the bottle or our torso is now kinked in, right? So when the belt is to the proper tightness, yes, it's tight around our torso right here, and then when we take that big belly breath and brace out, we're just bracing in to the belt. It's not kinking us in. So don't put your belt too tight. It's gonna take a little bit of playing around with what's too tight, what's too loose, but you should be able to feel out if you're creating that pressure or not. If you feel like you're struggling to take all your air in through your mouth and then brace into the belt is probably too tight. And something that always sticks with me when I think about how much pressure people can truly create with the belt is if you look at, I don't know if he still has it up, but an old Chris Duffin video, he would actually, I remember when he would do, how many times am I gonna drop that thing? I think I'm gonna leave it right there. When he would use these lever belts, he would keep breaking the metal, and he was using the Enzer belts at the time. I don't know what he's using now, but he would create so much intra-abdominal pressure, so pressure pushing out against the belt, that he would break the levers. And I remember on his desk he had like 3 or 4 of these broken levers, and Enzer would keep sending him more levers, so he kept breaking them. So I mean, you're probably not gonna be able to do that. That'd be a long time goal of mine if I could break one of these levers, creating so much intra-abdominal pressure. But that just shows you how much pressure is truly pushing out into that belt. It's not this relax, take a big breath, but kind of not brace into it. Like, you should be pushing out into the belt, and not only forward, but all the way around, filling up that belt to create pressure. So going back to the bottle analogy, let's get rid of the kink out of the bottle. So the belt isn't over tightened, we're not kinked in, but we're not taking a big breath of air, right? If there's no big breath of air, boom, our torso wants to cave over, right? If we put a ton of air in this bottle, and then we put the cap on, which would represent holding our breath, now the bottle doesn't want to kink over, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to do with our diaphragm. We're trying to take in a ton of air, so you can see my stomach expand. And then once we take in all that air, we're trying to brace. So watch, I'm gonna flex as well. So big breath, brace, and then we have the belt here creating pressure as well. So I hope that helps you out and kind of gives you an idea on how the belt is actually working, because once you know how the belt works and how to actually breathe and brace, I've seen someone get 50 pounds out of breathing and bracing. So I'm not saying that's going to be you, but I'm not saying it couldn't be you. Now I'm going to show you pretty much the only exercise I use to teach proper breathing and bracing. So you'll notice that most people, when they take a big breath, it's always into their chest. And we don't want that air going into our chest. As I keep referring to, we want it into our belly or our diaphragm. So this is a great exercise to teach how to breathe and brace properly. So we're gonna put this kettlebell, you can use a dumbbell or whatever weight you have, on your stomach and let it sink in. First, I always tell the client to breathe into their chest, so they know what that feels like, and that's probably what they wanted to do anyway. So watch as I breathe into my chest, the kettlebell won't raise, right? Now, if I tell them to breathe into their stomach, the kettlebell should raise upwards. So I'm going to take a big breath, try to take as much air as I can, but put it into my belly. So from there, then I have to brace. So you'll see the two pieces as the kettlebell moves. So the first one's going to be a big breath, and then it's going to be a brace. So ready? That's the brace. And then we're going to hold that through the whole duration of the squat. And I don't like talking like that. So one more time, big breath into the stomach, not into the chest. It raises up, and then I'm going to brace. Squat all the way down, come all the way up, release, reset. I usually only have to do this with clients at the most one time for them to realize the difference between breathing into their stomach and their diaphragm instead of breathing into their chest. So if you're struggling with figuring out how to breathe and brace properly, I would definitely encourage you to use this exercise, as it's worked for pretty much every single individual I've tried it with so far. Also, make sure that you're not being lazy about that big initial breath before you lift. I see a lot of people, if they take a little tiny breath and then they push and brace out into the belt. But if you were taking as much air in as you could, you're going to pressurize, think of this as a chamber more, and then it's going to be more rigid, stronger, and it's going to keep everything in a safer position. So, for example, you pick up that squat, I like to breathe and brace a little bit there too, so I'll take a little breath at that point, walk it out, and then I take the biggest breath I can. You'll hear different people talk about like trying to breathe in through the nose or through the mouth. I just go all through the mouth. Let's not make a funny comment about that. But so I take the biggest breath I can in all through the mouth. So we're gonna go, try to get as much as we can. Almost like you're trying to take in more air and you can't. When you get to that point, you're good. If you take a little tiny breath, that's not gonna be the most optimal. You can definitely optimize breathing and bracing and become a stronger individual simply by taking in a bigger breath. So biggest breath you can, you just walked out that squat, huge breath, brace, down, up, let the breath out, good to go. Well, I hope that helped you out. I think I touched base on pretty much everything from 10 millimeter to 13 millimeter to the Pioneer cut, regular, double prong, single prong, the new levers that are coming out from Pioneer, these levers, which one you should get. I'm sure I went back and listed some of the prices there as well, which you can look at even though I didn't talk about them. We talked about breathing and bracing, one exercise to help you breathe and brace better. I did link a couple of those Chris Duffin videos that go in more depth about breathing and bracing below. I hope that helped you out. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a like, comment, subscribe. That's all from me. Peace.
I got a shot and I ain't stopping, no. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable.